dead in a space
of the snooker final. Apologies, but we're unable to bring you this evening's schedule.
I'm an ordinary housewife and mother. I've dragged a J-cloth over my surfaces and plumped my Chesterfield, but I'm at my tether's end, dinner-wise. But wait, tucked behind my black bean sauce, in between the cayenne and the vanilla pods, is my salvation. Bisto. Add a splash to some sausages, chops, or even a burger, and Bob's your in-law, a fill-fulling family meal for any family with a family to feed. That's altogether a better idea than doing something out of a book with giblets.
Introducing fresh, creamy Lurpak spreadable. Douglas. Oh, thank you. Lurpak spreadable spreads straight from the fridge. Just imagine the delicious creamy taste we all love, only softer and smoother. Gosh, new Lurpak spreadable, it's all so sudden.
Travel agents in Louth in Lincolnshire, and a man tried to obtain £480 worth of foreign currency using a stolen switch card. Staff became suspicious and he left empty-handed. Look at the video again. Police believe he may be part of a team specialising in this kind of offence. He's between 35 and 40 and had a tattoo of a bird on the back of his hand. If you know his identity, ring Crimestoppers now.
Igor has been in England for 2 years. He's settled in with his foster parents and started school.
As far as he's concerned, this family was waiting for him and the past has got to be forgotten.
But the ghosts of the past must be confronted when his nurse from the orphanage is invited to a reunion with the boy she calls her own.
I think she'll go back with so many memories.
Igor, the boy who dared to dream. Network First, tonight at 10:40 on Yorkshire.
At 8:30 tonight, Anthea Turner meets more amazing, trusty animal friends in Pet Power. But now in Yorkshire, the world news from ITN.
From the studios of ITN, the news with Dermot Murnaghan.
Good evening. The story of the family from hell ended today when a father and his 2 sons were found guilty of murdering the boy's mother. It's thought to be the first case of its kind in Britain. Teacher Eve Howells was beaten to death with a hammer at her home in Huddersfield. During the trial, Glen and John Howells said they were driven to kill her after years of physical and mental torture. Ben McCarthy reports from Leeds Crown Court.
Trying to hide his face, Glen Howells, the boy who admitted killing his mother when he was just 15, and today found guilty of her murder. His brother John, the accomplice, also guilty of murder. Seen here before their arrest, John in the black T-shirt, who was just 14 at the time, watched as his older brother, wearing blue, attacked their mother from behind with a hammer. John then tried to hide the evidence. Both boys claimed their mother Evelyn was a tyrant who subjected them to years of abuse. Glen admitted he'd killed her, but claimed he was provoked and his father and brother weren't involved. But David Howells was in on his son's plan to kill their mother, although he was playing darts in his local pub at the time to be sure of an alibi. He didn't want to risk losing more than £150,000 that he stood to inherit from his wife by being implicated in her murder. Yet conversations between Howells and his sons, secretly recorded by the police, revealed that he knew all about the murder plan. David Howells' best friend, who'd been having a secret affair with Eve Howells for years, was also godfather to the 2 boys. He now stands to inherit her money. He says he still loves Eve, but wants nothing to do with the boys.
Well, all I can say is I thought she was a wonderful woman, and she was a good mother and a good wife.
And a friend of Eve Howells said it was the boy's father who's to blame for the killing.
There's no words can describe David Howells. To have done what he's done and put his sons through that, and was quite prepared to let them go away and suffer. He deserves never to come out again.
The judge, Mr. Justice Elliott, said he would be jailing David Howells for life and the two boys would be detained during Her Majesty's pleasure. But he explained that he'd wait until tomorrow to hear reports from the three defence lawyers before recommending the length of time each defendant should serve. Ben McCarthy, ITN, Leeds Crown Court.
Next on the early evening news, devolution gaffe. The Health Secretary sticks to his guns. British stars dominate the Oscar nominations, and Scottish fans hope for more than 3 seconds play this time against Estonia. The Health Secretary, Stephen Dorrell, refused to back down today despite being ticked off by the Prime Minister for talking about Scottish devolution. Mr Dorrell dismissed yesterday's gaffe, saying the issue will be at the centre of the election campaign. Here's our political correspondent, Tom Bradby.
Stephen Dorrell may have been publicly ticked off by the Prime Minister, but this evening he appeared to have no regrets.
My concern is to ensure that the Conservative case is put over with vigour throughout the United Kingdom. The Conservatives support the Union, Labour would undermine it. Thank you very much.
Mr Dorrell was given a campaigning role on the Constitution for the run-up to the election. After his verbal gaffe yesterday, Mr Major effectively fired him.
Every Cabinet Minister has an interest, of course. If a Cabinet Minister's answering questions in Wales, he expects to be asked questions about Wales. If he's in Scotland, he's expected to answer questions about Scotland. And if they decline to answer questions of that sort, I think you and your colleagues in the press would raise an eyebrow at it. But the responsibility for Scotland and Wales rests with the Secretary of State, and overall responsibility rests with me, and I hope that's clear.
Labour called it a farce. Mr Blair raised it at Prime Minister's questions.
Wouldn't it be rather better than rampaging through the responsibilities of other Cabinet Ministers if the Health Secretary addressed himself to the huge and manifest crisis in the National Health Service?
It seems clear Stephen Dorrell was deliberately slapped down today. It probably won't have done his leadership ambitions much good. Tom Bradby, ITN at Westminster.
British screen talent has taken a starring role in this year's Oscar nominations. Homegrown films, actors and directors all feature in the top categories. Dominating the list are the films The English Patient and Secrets and Lies. Caroline Kerr looks at the contenders.
The films selected as the Best Picture nominees of 1996 are The English Patient.
This sweeping wartime epic has been nominated for a dozen Oscars, including awards for its two English stars, Kristen Scott Thomas and Ralph Fiennes.
I'll come back for you. I promise. I'll never leave you.
It's one of a handful of films with British directors and stars which have dominated this year's nominations. Mike Leigh's film Secrets and Lies is also up for Best Film.
What is your type? What, film star?
Yeah.
Marlon. Like a bloke with a bit of meat on him.
The director says he's amazed.
We thought maybe if we were lucky, if things went our way, we'd get one nomination, Brenda Blethyn for Best Actress. But to get 5, including, you know, Best Screenplay, is good news, really.
The only Hollywood film to do well is Jerry Maguire starring Tom Cruise. So why have the British done so well this year?
30% of all Oscar winners have been British in the last few years, so that's a pretty good record. But I'm very happy because they are actually better films than those being produced by Hollywood just now.
The winners will be announced in 6 weeks. Caroline Kerr, ITN.
40,000 people took to the streets in Albania today for the funeral of the first victim of a month of anti-government rioting. Police kept well out of sight as the crowd virtually took over the port of Vlora. ITN's correspondent Andrew Simmons has been watching developments there for the past 2 days, and he's just sent this report.
People in their tens of thousands, nearly the entire population of Vlora, were on the streets again, this time not for confrontation. They came with flowers instead of stones. This vast procession was on its way to the funeral of a 30-year-old man shot dead in yesterday's rioting. The protesters passed the blazing ruins of the ruling Democratic Party headquarters, set on fire as another act of defiance. As they chanted, Albania's government debated whether to impose a partial state of emergency here. It is a huge swathe of emotion. 24 hours ago, many of these people were throwing rocks at the police. Today, they're declaring that Vlora belongs to them and not the government of President Sali Berisha.
The people of Vlora aren't going to be back. They are going to fight for their money, for their life. They are going to fight for their freedom. because this is not freedom, this is not democracy.
There were no police on the streets. At their headquarters, which had been under siege in the rioting, the few officers remaining refused to talk to me and became aggressive. There were some troops sent to mount a guard outside the City Hall. They promptly agreed to leave. The government will have to order a huge military clampdown if it's to regain control. Andrew Simmons, ITN, Vlora.
John Major today announced tough new measures to rid schools of bad teachers and improve standards. They include establishing new national targets to test the performance of individual schools and more league tables at ages 7, 11 and 14. Our political correspondent Jackie Ashley reports.
With education a key election issue, Labour and the Conservatives are trying to outbid each other with new measures to raise standards, both accusing the other of stealing their clothes. Today, the Prime Minister was brought in to launch the Conservatives' latest attack. Mr Major admitted that not all state schools are delivering the standards they should. The changes he wanted would reflect parent power, he said.
There will be a clear choice at the general election: education freedom or the progressive strangling of choice. We'll deliver the reforms that parent power demands and that parent power deserves.
Among the key measures Mr Major wants to see implemented are a fundamental overhaul of A-levels, national school performance targets and a pledge to rid schools of incompetent teachers. The Education Secretary elaborated on what teachers could be sacked for.
They are to do with class control, with discipline, with organisation, with lesson planning, with teaching interestingly, and of course with children's performance.
Some teaching unions were unimpressed.
It's all very well for the government to set targets for schools and teachers to improve, but I think it's high time the government set itself targets for giving teachers and students and pupils some decent conditions in which to work.
Labour said the real question for the government is why haven't they done all this before? They have, after all, been in power for the last 18 years. The Liberal Democrats, meanwhile, dismissed both parties' statements as simplistic gimmicks. Jackie Ashley, ITN, Westminster.
Customers of the Woolwich Building Society today voted overwhelmingly in favour of it converting into a bank. Over 95% of borrowers and savers said yes to the change, giving them free shares worth up to £1,200. The Space Shuttle Discovery blasted off from Cape Canaveral today on a mission to update and improve the Hubble Space Telescope. Discovery's crew will fit new instruments which, it's hoped, will allow British astronomers to see further into space than ever before. Here's our science editor, Lawrence McGuinty.
Ignition and liftoff. Discovery now on its way to service NASA's Hubble Space Telescope.
It's the most expensive MOT in the world, or rather out of the world. £500 million to send 7 highly qualified engineers on the shuttle to service the Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble was first serviced 4 years ago, and since then has produced stunning images of objects deep in space. Now it's in for a major overhaul. Astronauts will carry out 4 spacewalks, avoiding the solar panels which are too delicate to roll up. They'll replace old instruments with the latest technology and install a new infrared heat camera that can see deeper into space. That should help sort out a disagreement about the age of the universe. Using existing Hubble pictures, astronomers estimate the age as 10 billion years.
On the other hand, other astronomers estimating the ages of some individual objects in the universe are arriving at answers of around about 15 billion years. So clearly there's a conflict there and something has to give.
After this second repair mission, Hubble's instruments should be sharp enough to settle the argument. Lawrence McGuinty, ITN.
Football and England players Tony Adams and Paul Ince should find out tonight if they're fit enough for tomorrow's crucial World Cup qualifier. Today their opponents Italy have been limbering up at Wembley. England are slight favourites, with Alan Shearer now certain to be in the lineup after worries about his fitness. And Scotland are odds-on favourites to beat Estonia tonight in their rearranged World Cup qualifying game in Monaco. The original fixture ended in farce when Scotland refused an evening kick-off and Estonia didn't turn up when it was brought forward. From Monaco, Bill Neely reports.
Under the walls of Prince Rainier's castle, the Scottish fans are here. The Scottish team is here, fit and ready to take on Estonia. This time the floodlights are working, the kick-off time is agreed, unlike the last time. Last October the fans sparkled, the floodlights didn't, so the kick-off time was brought forward, but Estonia failed to show up. The game lasted 3 seconds. But the Scots weren't awarded a win. Tonight is the replay. The Scots can't wait.
The game will be very different, obviously, because I mean...
It'll last more than 3 seconds.
Well, I would hope so. I mean, if we get one in the first 3 seconds, I'd settle for that. But I've got a feeling it might last a little bit longer. I hope that we will be able to give them a good game.
So you're definitely turning up?
Yeah, absolutely.
We caught them at lunch in Monaco, though that proves nothing. They were having lunch last time when the Scots were on the field.
Utterly confident. They're going to get humped 3-0 for their cheek.
Scotland want a win from this game, but most of all, they just want a game. The fans are taking no chances. It was kilts against the rest today. The Yacht Club crowd has seen nothing like it. Bill Neely, ITN, Monaco.
Finally, the pre-election tension at Westminster eased briefly this afternoon in a rare moment of lightheartedness. It began as the Prime Minister tried to wish Dennis Skinner, the Labour MP for Bolsover, a happy 65th birthday. Our political editor Michael Brunson takes up the story.
Such is Dennis Skinner's snarling contempt for the utterances of anyone who isn't in the Labour Party, and quite a few who are, that he's known as the Beast of Bolsover. So, when a Tory backbencher reminded the Prime Minister that it was the Beast's 65th birthday today, Mr Major showed that he expected the worst.
Wrong though the honourable gentleman has been on almost every issue during his long parliamentary career.
Mr Skinner, diagonally opposite Mr Major, moved not a muscle, scowling straight ahead as the Prime Minister continued.
Speaker, he's going to say he isn't 65 and I'm fiddling the figures, but I believe that he really is. I hope he smiles before he's 66, Madam Speaker.
The House liked that. They actually rather liked Dennis, and there was just a suspicion of the Happy Birthday to You song. But after the Speaker had called him, Dennis was as menacing as ever, raging on about government spending.
And he is the Prime Minister who on Black Wednesday lost this country £10 billion in an afternoon and never went near a betting shop.
The punches delivered, Dennis stretched himself back onto the benches, scowling to the last, but secretly he'll have enjoyed every minute. Michael Brunson, ITN, Westminster.
On News at 10 with Trevor McDonald tonight, a full report from Monaco on that Scotland match, plus behind the scenes as England prepare for tomorrow's crucial game against Italy. The main news is the husband and 2 sons of the teacher Eve Howells have been found guilty of her murder. And that's Tuesday's early evening news. Until 5:40 tomorrow, goodbye.
Hello, good evening. Well, they tell us we need the rain, so I guess we should count our blessings. Unfortunately, along with the rain, we're going to be blessed with strong southwest winds and generally cloudy skies tomorrow. The rain came in from the south and west today. It started dry in eastern areas, as you can see on the radar pictures early today. Just a few showers up in the north and west. But that's the more general rain that many of us have seen moving in from the southwest today. Some heavy rain in places, and if it hasn't reached you yet, it probably will later this evening and overnight. It's moving north across most of Britain. By the end of the night, or first thing tomorrow morning, the weather fronts that are carrying the rain will be tangled around the UK, as you see there. There's the low pressure producing the strong winds, lots of isobars, but at least the winds are from the west or southwest, and so the temperatures are reasonably high. Let's come back to tonight then. The only place that won't be mild tonight is the Northern Isles. There could be a frost there and some icy patches. But for the rest of us, it's cloudy, wet and windy. The heavier bursts of rain moving away to the north and east, leaving drizzly rain for the rest of us with low cloud, mist and fog on the hills and strong southwest winds too. Now, it's all a bit of a mixture tomorrow, generally a cloudy day with further outbreaks of rain in places, but it will turn more showery with 1 or 2 brighter spells coming across parts of Scotland and the northwest of England and Northern Ireland during the day. Perhaps late in the day, those brighter spells edging into other western parts of England and Wales, but for most of the day, it's cloudy with rain or drizzle or both. Temperatures tomorrow, mild through the morning, but as that brighter weather comes along to the north and west, the temperatures will fall. As I've said already, it is going to be a windy day for us all, quite strong, even gale force southwest winds. Here's a summary.
Power gen, generating electricity whatever the weather.
Hello, join me on Tonight in half an hour to meet the winner of our Valentine's Makeover, plus your chance to meet heartthrob Peter Andre. See you for that competition news at 6:30.
Tuesday kicks off with Emmerdale.
Most chaps would have some decorum. They'd think to themselves, I've cheapened my lady friend, best not show my face. But not Zachariah Dingle.
Then Tantrums in Quayside. Before tempers fray in the Bills.
It's hardly police work, is it, Reg?
Patrolling with Pet Power is Anthea Turner. Before problems in peak practice. Essential viewing.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Don't be. It's Tuesday on Yorkshire. Now on Yorkshire Calendar with Krista Ackroyd and Mike Morris.
Hello, welcome to Calendar on Tuesday the 11th of February.
The day Eve Howells' husband and 2 sons were found guilty of her brutal murder.
Mother gave no love or affection to these boys for year after year after year. It was abuse, it was violence, it was torment, and they were trapped in this house at Dalton Green Lane, from which there appeared to be no escape.
It's deeply tragic, the whole story, not only from the point of view of the poor woman who died, but from all those involved with it.
There's no words can describe David Howells. To have done what he's done and put his sons through that, and was quite prepared to let them go away and suffer. He deserves never to come out again.
Hello. To the outside world, they're an ordinary family, the school teacher, her husband, and their teenage sons. But Eve Howells was to die a horrible death, her skull crushed by a series of hammer blows in an attack planned and carried out by her own family. Today, her husband and 2 teenage sons were all found guilty of her murder.
Only one, Glen, had admitted the killing. He'd told the court he'd killed his own mother after years of mental abuse. He described how he repeatedly hit her over the head with a hammer and then said he loved her. But all 3 were caught after police secretly taped their conversations in custody. Eve Howells' side of the story will never be fully known. Chris Kiddie reports.
A hand covering his face, Glen Howells is driven from court a convicted murderer. Guilty too, his 16-year-old brother John. They were known locally as the Cray twins. And their 48-year-old father David Howells, who plotted with them to kill their mother. The verdicts came after the jury had been out for 8 hours. Reaction was swift.
There's no words can describe David Howells. To have done what he's done and put his sons through that, and was quite prepared to let them go away and suffer. He deserves never to come out again.
Glen was trapped by bloodstains on his socks, which placed him at the murder scene. Blood splashed on John's jacket, said the prosecution, pointed to him being there at the same time. Glen had admitted killing his mother, but he said he'd been provoked because she made his life hell.
The only thing that I'm able to say at this stage is that we obviously welcome the jury's decision, and it was clearly correct. And until the judges pass sentence tomorrow, I can't say anything else. Thank you very much.
David Howells' solicitor said he'd be considering an appeal. The conviction had partly been secured by covert police tape recordings of the 3 accused after the boys had been arrested.
I think the primary ground will probably be the decision of the judge to admit the covert tape, which of course we said was entirely inadmissible during the course of the proceedings.
An appeal is also being considered by the lawyer acting for John Howells. Much was made in court of the allegedly cruel way Eve Howells had treated her sons and how her husband had failed to intervene.
This was a situation which was built up over the years, and it developed into what I suppose can be called an execution of the mother on the last day of August 1995, when John was only 14, I think Glen was 15, and Dad was out playing darts.
Eve Howells' secret lover for more than a decade was Russell Hurst, seen on the right here with Eve and her husband. He stands to inherit Eve's money, which he says he intends to give to charity. He gave his reaction to the verdict at his home this afternoon.
I'm just glad it's all over, and I'm glad justice has been done for Eve. What's been said in court, a lot of it has been lies and a lot of it's been exaggeration. I thought she was a wonderful woman, and she was a good mother and a good wife.
And at one of David Howells' regular drinking haunts, disbelief that a father could be involved in such a crime with his 2 sons.
We all knew David very well. He came in here 5 nights a week. So we all knew him really well, but never thought he was capable of murder.
But a jury today decided that David Howells was capable of murder, as were his sons. All 3 will be sentenced by Mr Justice Elliott tomorrow afternoon.
Well, we can go live now to Chris Kiddy, who's followed that trial since the very beginning. Chris, when the verdicts were announced, how did the sons react in court?
There was very little reaction from the 3 accused in court. They've shown very little emotion throughout this month-long hearing, in fact. The verdicts were read out and they simply bowed their heads. There's been not much reaction at all from them.
During the course of the trial, was there any evidence of togetherness amongst the 3 related accomplices, as it were?
Only once or twice I saw any display of emotion. Once, I can recall, when John returned from the witness box, having given his evidence, he was patted on the back by Glen. But otherwise, the 3 have sat in that witness box for the past 4 weeks, simply staring straight ahead or at the jury and not even whispering between themselves or giving anything away.
And why is the sentencing tomorrow and not today?
Well, the judge said today that he would have to sentence David Howells to life imprisonment and the 2 boys will be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. But he wanted more time for consultation. He'll have to make a recommendation on how long the boys should be detained and how long David Howells should be detained. He's making time for that and the court will resume here at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Chris Kiddy, thank you.
Eve Howells' murder shocked our region, but today's verdict that her husband and sons were the killers will shock the nation. The case is one of the most extraordinary ever to come before the courts. Katie Oscroft now reports on how the breakdown of a family led to murder.
This is the home where a family lived for years and where they were in the end to destroy each other's lives. The family of 4 who lived in this tiny bungalow were to many outsiders an ordinary family. But what was to happen here was to mark them out as extraordinary. Theirs was to become a case which, in the words of one of Yorkshire's most senior detectives, was unique in British criminal history. It was to capture the headlines far beyond their hometown, the story of how David Howells, a likeable man, said his friends, John, his youngest son, 14 when it all happened, and Glen, the eldest, coming up to his last year at school, were to conspire to kill Eve, their wife and mum. She ruled the home, she was to die there.
Going to the house was quite a strange experience. The bungalow had a very claustrophobic feel to it. And it was very striking that the only person who seemed to be represented in the bungalow, really, was the victim herself. And it was absolutely full of kitchen implements. There were enough utensils there to start a restaurant. But there was very little food, and the freezer was locked. And the sort of combination of lots of instruments and lots of cookery books, but no actual food, made one think that perhaps something unusual going on here in terms of attitude to food and attitudes to control.
Power and control were part of Eve Howells' life. She was a teacher, she was strict, some pupils couldn't stand her. Her own children hated her too. She controlled their lives for as long as they could remember. So they planned to kill her, carried it out, then tried to cover it up. There emerged an unbelievable story. There'd been nothing like it, said an author who's delved into the lives of many criminals.
Of course, on one level, it's not unique at all. There are families all over the country that are not getting on with each other, where the mother is dominant and disliked by husband and children. That's not unusual. Or it can be daughters as well. What is so unusual is that all 3 should have that lack of the emotional recognition, that psychopathic element, in fact.
Glen wielded the hammer. He said he got his ideas from the television, Crime Watch and The Bill. John took care of hiding the bloodied clothes and the weapon. Dad was out of the way, in on the plan, clear of the blame, they thought.
Killing the errant mother, in this case, may be a way of preventing something worse from happening. And it's done out of fear. They may have killed because they were afraid, not necessarily of her, though obviously on one level they were afraid of the intensity which consumed them, and killing was a way of getting out of that.
When the killing happened, there were tears, sorrow from unsuspecting neighbours and friends, the family's dining table filled with cards. Down at the bowling club where David would take his sons and sometimes his wife, the regulars were taken in.
Well, they were the same as any other member. As far as I know in the club, they were no different in the club, just like any other family.
Glen said in court the summer of '95 was hell. He said his mum was unbearable. One of his friends remembers that summer too.
It was, you know, boys talking about boys' things. You know, it was summer, it was warm, music on, just having a laugh. I felt quite taken in because the police have obviously got some reason for arresting them, and I'd been putting a lot of time and effort into, you know, taking his mind off things. And from then on I just tried to stay out of it.
While Glen was carrying out the vicious attack on his mum, his dad was down at the local, playing darts, waiting for the first sign that the plan had been carried out. The people around him were taken in.
Well, he came to play his dance, you know, and he stood at end at bar, just exactly where I am at the moment. And to me, if somebody had told me that that man's done anything wrong, or suspected to do anything wrong, I would have been shocked.
It was just normal game of darts, you know what I mean? It was just normal. Like I was scoring game and he was playing, and it was just like, it was always loud, but that's how we knew him.
We all got together and a game of darts, that's it. There were no special about it, no different to any other Thursday night. And just remember when we'd finished the game, police came in to get Mr. Howells.
There was in effect a fifth member of this family of four, Russell Hurst, the boyfriend, David's best mate, Eve's secret lover for 12 years. Secret, that is, until just before she died. But the plan was to fall apart. All three were secretly taped by the police, discussing where it had gone slightly wrong. As well as the tears, there were winks and smiles. Father and sons were to give themselves away.
It's deeply tragic, the whole story, not only from the point of view of the poor woman who died, but from all those involved with it.
Number 6 Dalton Green Lane in Huddersfield lies empty today. Neighbours want to forget it was ever home to Eve and David, Glen and John.
Katie Oscroft reporting on the family that murdered a mother. Well, that's where we'll take a break, but don't go away because in a moment we'll have all the rest of today's news.
And we're going to be talking to the man whose hand was blown off as he played with a child's toy he thought was harmless.
Don't try it. Believe me, do not try it. It's not worth it. Use them for what they're intended to be used for and nothing else.
This man has a distressing medical condition. His condition is dandruff. His treatment is Nizoral dandruff shampoo, because Nizoral has a patented ingredient that targets and prevents the main cause of dandruff. Nizoral dandruff shampoo, first aid for dandruff.
Dear Volkswagen, I have recently purchased a Golf GTI. It costs less than $14,500 all in. As I appear to be the only person in the close to own one, everyone was keen to know how much it cost. So I said $16,500. Well, everyone thinks Volkswagens are expensive, don't they? Imagine my horror when I opened my newspaper to be confronted by the real price of a GTI. Do you think you could stop running adverts like this as they're ruining my image? I've done what I can to stop people finding out, and so far I think I've got away with it. Yours faithfully, James Archer.
Welcome back to Calendar. Well, in a moment you can see how Mike and I got on in a pancake race today.
You don't want to look. And also we're going to be finding out why a certain young man is causing a stir in the world of Yorkshire cricket. You might not know the face, but you'll certainly recognise the name. But first, there's renewed controversy tonight over a report exclusively revealed on Canada last night, which branded Sheffield's Supertram system as unsafe. City councillors have promised urgent action to prevent more accidents involving cars skidding on slippery road surfaces next to the tracks. But they say it's not clear how the problem came about, and that could lead to a fresh dispute over who pays to put it right. Our reporter Julie Lockwood has been following today's developments.
Action to prevent more accidents where traffic shares the roads with Sheffield's Supertram has been promised within days. It could mean road closures, lower speed limits or more warnings for motorists about the skidding hazards. But in the long term, putting matters right could mean expensive remedial work.
So I'm keen to make sure that the ratepayers of Sheffield don't pick up the bill for doing something which we shouldn't be faced with. I mean, if the standards were sufficient and the design and the construction was effective, then we shouldn't have this problem.
The report from the Transport Research Laboratory says that in wet conditions, low friction of the tram tracks and the concrete surface between them is causing accidents even at low speeds.
The design was done in accordance with the current Department of Transport standards, and the report has come as somewhat of a surprise to us.
Before the system was built and after it was built and before it was put into service, both the Railways Inspectorate and the Highways Authority approved it.
That sounds rather like passing the buck.
No, I don't think it does at all. We organise and drive the trams. Clearly, vehicles drive on the roads.
Until the issue of who is responsible is resolved, drivers are being urged to reduce their speeds and take extreme care.
Julie Lockwood reporting. Now, you may remember Calendar's story yesterday about the man whose hand was blown off by caps from a toy gun. Well, tonight Trevor Bryden from Doncaster is back on the operating table undergoing a second operation. But just before he went into surgery, he spoke to our man Dick Taylor about the moment he was almost killed by a child's toy.
Permanently disfigured but lucky to be alive. His missing left hand a reminder of the moment's madness which nearly killed him.
It was one of those foolish mistakes that people make, and I made one, and I'm paying the consequence now.
22-year-old Trevor Bryden had his left hand blown off as he packed rolls of children's toy caps into a steel tube. He was trying to make a banger. Instead, he made a bomb. He was lucky to survive the explosion.
I put the caps into the piece of pipe and I was screwing the end on it. It was a threaded end cap. And I was screwing the end on it and it just exploded. It blew up. And the next thing I knew, my hand's ruined. It was just something I was just trying. It was a little brainstorm that went wrong, really.
His appeal to others who may be tempted to mishandle the toy caps is stark and heartfelt.
Don't try it. Believe me, do not try it. It's not worth it. Use them for what they're intended to be used for and nothing else.
Tonight he's undergoing a second operation. He'll bear the scars of a moment's foolishness for the rest of his life.
Taylor reporting there. A court's heard today how the screams of a female probation officer rang through a prison wing after an alleged attack by Michael Sams at Wakefield's top security jail. Sams is accused of the attempted murder and false imprisonment of Julia Flack, who'd been a probation officer for 27 years. The court was told that Sams had threatened Mrs. Flack with a metal spike, as he had done with Stephanie Slater. David Harrison reports from Durham Crown Court.
Giving evidence in court today were prisoners and prison officers who claimed they'd rushed to the aid of the probation officer Julia Flack, who's 50, after an alleged attack in a converted cell at Wakefield's top security prison in October 1995. Standing accused of attempted murder and false imprisonment is Michael Sams, a Category A prisoner seen here at an earlier hearing. The first witness at Durham Crown Court today, Craig Bastow, who was a serving prisoner at Wakefield Jail at the time of the alleged incident. He told the courts how he heard two screams, and after seeing Julia Flack wedged between the door and Michael Sams, he claims he restrained Sams, taking his left arm from around her neck. And in evidence submitted from police interviews with Sams after the alleged incident, he claimed all he wanted was the return of some of his paintings he said staff at Wakefield Prison had confiscated. He claimed if he had achieved what he wanted, he'd then probably have killed himself. Another serving prisoner in the witness box today, Charles Butler, who told the jury that he'd been talking to Julia Flack just before it's claimed Michael Sams entered the room. He described hearing a scream more or less like death, asking for help. On returning to the room, he claims he saw Mrs. Flack fall to the floor and crawl into the corner of the room. He said she was petrified. Michael Sams denies attempted murder and false imprisonment. The trial continues tomorrow morning.
And more from that Michael Sams court case tomorrow. In a moment, we'll be meeting the cricket star with the famous name. But first, more news from your part of the Callander region.
A massive fire which destroyed a West Yorkshire mill and forced dozens of people to flee from their homes is tonight being treated as suspicious. The Royal Mills complex in Halifax was completely gutted by the blaze and parts of the building have now collapsed. None of the residents living nearby were injured, but 2 firefighters were as they fought to tackle the fire. Leslie Alexander reports.
An empty shell, all that's left of the 5-storey Royal Mills in Halifax. It had been under renovation, now there's little left to salvage. Early yesterday evening and flames tore through the building. Danger to local residents forced them to abandon their homes.
When we arrived, we found this multi-storey mill complex well alight, going from one end to the other, causing major problems in the area to adjacent property. The main problem is the wind at the moment. When we arrived, because of the wind, swirling winds, we had difficulty in actually fighting the fire. At the stage where we knew we couldn't save the building, the main priority then was to save the pub adjacent to the property and the Volvo garage on the opposite side of the road.
At one stage, 50 fire officers were needed to control the flames. Working well into the night, 2 of the men suffered slight leg injuries. Some nearby buildings were heat damaged. Today, fire investigators returned to the scene to find out why this once towering mill was reduced to rubble. But tonight, confirmation from West Yorkshire Police and Fire Service that the blaze is being treated as suspicious.
Leslie Alexander reporting there. Bulldozers are brought in today to demolish the barricades surrounding the Menwith Hill Women's Peace Camp near Harrogate, in what's being seen as the first stage of a plan to evict the protesters. Old trees and brushwood were removed by council workmen, undeterred by the women who tried to stop them. Nikki Chadwick reports.
The women who live here at the Peace Camp had been expecting this. They'd had notice by letter that North Yorkshire County Council would be turning up on their doorsteps at any time. The bulldozers arrived following complaints by local councillors and residents that the camp is an eyesore. In an operation that took 2 hours to complete, tons of debris were removed from the site.
We were woken at 8 o'clock by the noise of the munchers arriving, and the bailiffs, without any word of warning, just started clearing the site immediately.
As workmen brought down the barricades, one of the women, 18-year-old student Jenny Wildchild, scaled a tree in protest at their actions. Just 2 weeks ago, she was arrested after climbing up a radio mast, again an act of protest, this time against the presence of the nearby United States listening station. North Yorkshire County Council has admitted that it's working on legal action to ban the camp from the lay-by of the main Harrogate to Skipton Road. They also want to ensure that the women don't set up camp anywhere else. But the women say they are not moving, and nothing the council can do or threaten to do will persuade them otherwise.
Police arrested 7 people in raids in Leeds today in connection with the murder of pensioner Isabel Gray. Detectives arrested 6 men and 1 woman at addresses in the Cross Green and Seacroft areas of the city. 82-year-old Miss Gray was found dead at her home in Crossgates 2 weeks ago.
Government inspectors have this afternoon delivered their draft report into the running of Calderdale Council schools. A team of inspectors was brought in to review the effectiveness of the authorities' support to schools following the crisis at the riding school in Halifax. The inspectors returned today to give a verbal briefing on their findings to council officers. Details are expected to be revealed tomorrow.
Soldiers appear before magistrates at Richmond in North Yorkshire charged with murder. 36-year-old Ranger Noel Parker from the Irish Regiment, which is based at the Alma Barracks in Catterick, was remanded in custody until next Tuesday. The charge follows the discovery of a man's body on Sunday night at nearby Colburn. And that's tonight's news in brief.
Road safety investigators have come up with a startling theory about a stretch of road which is an accident black spot. The road is so boring, drivers are falling asleep at the wheel. There have been so many crashes on the A180 between Scunthorpe and Grimsby, the police have called in university researchers to find out just why. Jim Greensmith has been for a drive on the road that apparently sends drivers to sleep.
It runs for nearly 20 miles, much of it straight as a die. But this dual carriageway is turning from a planner's dream into a motorist's nightmare. Sleep-related accidents on the A180 eastbound are 2.5 times higher than the national average. Humberside police were so worried they called in experts from Loughborough University. Their research suggests drivers tend to relax on this road because they're nearing the end of a journey on the M180, which changes here from 3 lanes into the A180's 2 lanes.
You shouldn't put yourself under the pressure of driving whilst you're tired. We've found that a number of these sleep-related accidents involve laybys on the A180, and by improving the design and the layout of the laybys will reduce the number of fatal accidents.
Nationally, 10% of all accidents are thought to be caused by drivers nodding off at the wheel. The trip meter tells me I've travelled 9.7 miles so far on the A180. That's about halfway between the M180 and Grimsby. It's certainly featureless, with embankments running alongside much of the route. The report indicates it's a tedious drive, boring and unstimulating. This long and lonely and boring road is certainly not popular.
There's not many gaps as well, you know, there's no stopovers, like a service station or something.
So, have you ever fallen asleep?
Yes, many times. Just now.
Very laborious, nothing to interest you along it.
But come rain or shine, the best advice for drivers who get drowsy is pull in and rest. And at least the A180 has plenty of laybys for just that.
Let's hope that Jim's piece hasn't put you to sleep, because we're still here. All right, a question for you. What's in a name? Well, if events in Bradford today are anything to go by, quite a lot it would seem. Because this morning the media turned out in force to watch a relatively inexperienced 19-year-old signed to play cricket for a relatively unknown club in the Bradford League. Why? Well, because the name of the youngster is Botham. John Shires was there.
First of all, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Liam Botham, Windle's new signing for the coming season.
At least a dozen Test cricketers, past and present, have played in the Bradford League in the last 10 years, but none of them have been unveiled in a blaze of publicity at a news conference, complete with a buffet lunch to satisfy the voracious appetites of the region's press. And all this for a 19-year-old who's played only a couple of first-class games. It's something young Liam may not like, but being his father's son, he's simply had to get used to it.
I think most people who know me now know that I hate that sort of thing, people going on about who my dad is. No, I'm Liam Botham, I'm not Ian Botham, I'm making my own way in professional sport.
The facts are that despite a sensational start in first-class cricket when he took 5 wickets on his championship debut for Hampshire, Liam has opted instead for a full-time career in rugby union with Courage First Division club West Hartlepool. But he still wants to keep his long-term options open, and weekend cricket in arguably the best league in the country fits the bill.
I spoke to my old man about it and spoke to a few people, but the more I hear about it, the better it sounds, more competitive, and obviously people, it is, if not the strongest league in the country. So I mean, the standard's going to be very high. So I'm, looking forward to the challenge of it.
It's not a bad deal for Windhill either, even if the publicity did come as a bit of a surprise to his new teammates.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? But I mean, he's in every newspaper when you open it now. But he's a likeable lad. He's a good-looking lad. And I just like everything about him. He'll fit in well down here.
And at the very least, young Both will put a few on the gate for a start, and even more if his dad turns up to watch as well.
And that would double the gate, wouldn't it? Now, talking of more sport.
Sport. Pancake Day. We were in a race today.
Well, call it a race. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Radio Air was one of the challenges.
Let's take a look.
They challenged us for the Lord Mayor of Leeds charity. First, of course, the training programme was quite impressive at first, actually. Then a shade arrogant. The old techniques don't work anymore.
Yeah, look, the race starts absolutely roaring down, and we don't want to be big-headed, but we actually won. Well, actually, I think Radio Air let us win, didn't they?
There's Crystal on the key leg. Both her legs in good working order. Quite good flipping action, I thought. Who's
Go
that
on,
old
Michael.
tramp?
I was most impressed at the way that he managed to run and still toss the pancake as well. Very, very good. And we won, there we were.
I needed first aid afterwards.
You had to lie down for 3 hours.
Enjoy
We'll
your
see you
pancakes.
tomorrow.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bringing power to your home. Yorkshire Electricity, sponsors of the ITV weather.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. Well, it was a bright and sunny start to the day for most of us, but that cloud was thickening all the time from the southwest, and that led to quite a few showers around the region this afternoon. Let's start by taking a look on today's weather chart. We've got low pressure out towards the west with attendant frontal systems, and they've been moving towards us, and basically they're setting the pattern for the next few days. It's going to stay very unsettled until we reach the weekend, when things should be brighter but colder. Now on today's satellite, here's that bright start I was just talking about with very little cloud around, and again here's that low pressure with those attendant frontal systems, this big block of cloud moving towards us all the time. So this evening, well, obviously it's cloudy. We've still got quite a few showers around, which may or may not be heavy at times. Overnight we will find those showers becoming more or less confined to the higher ground, chiefly in Pennine areas, where it will also become quite misty at times. Elsewhere and away from the Pennines, becoming dry with some good cloud breaks. It certainly won't be a cold night though. The overnight low down to 9 Celsius in those gusty southwesterly winds. Now tomorrow the sun rises at 7:30, it sets again at 12 minutes past 5. Tomorrow it's a fairly rainy start to the day again, 1 or 2 cloud breaks I think, but into the afternoon they'll become very few and far between. So it's a cloudy afternoon, fairly windy as well, and temperatures well up to around the average for this time of the year, 13 Celsius. That's all from me. Christine's here in a moment. Now here's the summary.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello and welcome to Tonight on Tuesday. Apart from the voice, I'm now fully recovered from the flu and I'm raring to go, so let's get on with it. Coming up, Carolyn Hodgson reveals just who's won our special Valentine's makeover. Gaynor Barnes discovers life can be tough if you're an oil painting. Steve Lefebvre takes a sweeping look at Scarborough, and we've music in the studio with Rebuilding Bridges. That's all on Tonight, coming up in the next half hour. And we start with fashion now. A few weeks ago we launched our Valentine makeover competition, and not surprisingly we got stacks of entries. It was tough finding a winner, but we eventually did it. The thing is, the winner had no idea she'd won the special Valentine's makeover until Carolyn Hodgson surprised her. Let's see what happened.
I'm here to surprise Carol Clifton. She thinks she's been filmed for a calendar fish and chip competition. She's in for a shock.
Carol. Hello, Carol. It's not calendar, it's the Tonight Show. And you've won our Valentine's makeover competition.
My legs have gone to jelly. Oh, I don't believe it.
Are you crying?
Yes.
Oh, we've got to see it. How does everybody else feel? Does she deserve it?
Yeah.
This is how Carol looked just 3 years ago when she was 8 stone heavier.
I'm Annalise and I'm the person shopper for House of Fraser. We'll fit you out with a lovely outfit.
Oh, lovely,
okay.
thank you, yes.
Like that, it makes it look a little bit snappier looking this
Yes,
way.
it does, you're right there.
Now, you shouldn't be going in there.
Oh, that's right.
Can I be honest? I don't think it does that much for you because it just hangs. I think it'd be nice after you having been 8 stone big, you want to show your figure off now.
Well, that's
and I
true,
think it'd be nice to get something slightly more fitted. Do you? It's not my favourite.
Right, no. I like this, but I don't think just there.
It's a little bit tight
Just a
fitting.
little bit tight there, but it does look very
It's
glamorous.
very glamorous.
Nice for a lovely evening out somewhere, really special.
But would
I
you
wouldn't-
get your wear out of that?
No.
Well, there's no point
No.
having something if you're not going to wear it, is there?
No, but it's nice. I like the colour. I
The
wouldn't have
colour does
thought that
suit
I
you.
would. Do you like it?
I do. It's very smart.
Can't believe that's me. If you'd have had one before, it'd have been like, so.
At first she liked nothing, now she likes everything. Women, you just can't win, can you?
Hello, Carolyn.
Oh, this is the one. Glam push, you look fabulous. Give me a twirl.
Nice.
Absolutely
Doesn't it look lovely?
stunning. The colour's very glamorous, the black's versatile. and it shows off your fabulous waist, and you look very curvy. Oh, you look all woman. Well, we've got your outfit. It's time for hair and makeup.
Let's go.
All right. OK, Steve, you're the expert. What are you going to do to our Carol?
Well, basically, we're just going to get away from this old type of shape. Carol's growing a perm out. We want to reduce that, take the weight down, bring it more into line with what's happening today, basically.
Because you're gorgeous, I'd do anything for you. Because you're gorgeous, I know you'll get me
I'm finally slicing some potatoes.